Okay, for the, sound like I was dying there for a second. For the lead parts on this, I'm actually going to use a different distortion. I've got this one labeled as main distorted lead. The other one is more vintage and good for rhythms and so forth, and I do use it for solos because it's got a nice treble presence to it, so it's got a bit of a snap. It's more like, you know, Paul Gilbert-ish or whatever, very classic. This distortion is very creamy, and I want to use a different distortion because it's really going to help to differentiate the parts. I want to show you something real quick. First, let me play a little bit of this for you so you hear what it sounds like. Right. What I've got here, I think this sounds pretty good, and what I did to it is, let me zoom in, because this is all virtual, right, in the virtual world. I got all these effect pedals, these emulators that come with this program. I've got a little bit of reverb on here, just a little bit, not much. The mix is very small. See where my cursor is right here? It's just a little bit of a blend. I don't want too much reverb. And then I've got, and this is really what does it, first of all, you're going to have to work a little bit to find the perfect distorted sound that you like. But one trick that I do recommend is to take a little bit of delay. And you can do this virtually or with an effect pedal. I have just a tad bit of delay on here, and it's set so that it doesn't, you know, repeat after a lot of milliseconds. So it's not like I, you know, play something like beep, beep. It's nothing like that. It's very quick in response. It's more like beep, beep, like that. And the mix is just real subtle, so it's not real in your face. So you barely hear it, and what that does is it kind of creates, it adds to the reverb. It's kind of like a separate form of reverb. In fact, let me take the reverb off for a second. Let's see what the delay sounds like on its own. Just real subtle. It stops right after that. Right? And I've also got, it's set for analog delay with modulation, which means that it kind of sounds like it's going to go out of tune. But I actually kind of dig that sound. So when I put it with the reverb, it just enforces it. And that's what makes this distortion very creamy sounding. Okay, so let's get started laying down a main lead part, shall we? Okay, so what we're going to do now is create two layers and put them together, and that was really gay, I know. And so we're going to start with our first layer. And what I'm going to do is, you know, it's one of those things where if from your perspective you want to know about the scales and modes, really what you need to do is, of course, brush up on your scales and modes and learn them, and then learn, because you can find out anywhere which ones are major and which ones are minor. And basically any minor mode or scale will work with any minor chords or chord progression, and the same can be said with major. So, you know, for instance, Dorian will work with minor, straight minor, minor seventh, and so forth. And there are lots to choose from. There are quite a few minor modes and major modes and all that. Well, this is a very minor sounding piece, and so I think I'm going to use the natural minor scale. We'll just keep it simple. So it'll be out of D, because our first chord was a D minor triad. And then now that's not the rule of thumb, but you do want to, as best you can, stick with the root notes. And I'm going to use the D minor natural scale because it's basically going to contain all the notes that are also in my other chords. So I'll be safe. I can just sit there and jam out of that little area if I wanted to. So one way of looking at this, I said it's the natural minor scale. It's also basically the Aeolian mode. So what I'm going to do is use just the top half of the scale and use those notes and work with it and keep it simple. But first, I'm going to jam over this piece just using the natural minor scale or the Aeolian mode. And that's one of the best things that you can do, is just play the scale or mode straight as it is over the chord progression. Try and fit it up within the timing of the song, and you'll start getting a lot of great ideas, and it gets you thinking that way and cleans up your playing. So let me turn on everything real quick. Okay, you see how nicely that fit? Works beautifully. So I'm going to use, I said, the top half of the scale, which would be the notes. And actually I'm going to end up using, which will be for the second part. So the first part would be something like that. And the arrangement of the notes, let's see, I worked with it a second ago, is going to be different. It's hard for me to explain until I get the song rolling, but the timing will be like... That'll be the first part. So that's on the 10th fret of the G string as well. It'll be something like that. I may have too many notes in there. But I'm going in and out of the notes. That makes for a very interesting guitar solo. Instead of just playing it, you know... You can certainly do that, but I got this, you know, a little bit of melody going on. You could do that too. That's what I did a video on that as well, the step down. You just keep taking one note down at a time. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and off the top of my head record this first layer, and we'll see what we get. I might not get it first take, but I'll try. Okay, I like that. It's not perfect, but we'll stick with it. So I'm going to turn the camera off real quick and clean it up, and then we'll get to our second. Okay, so I've got layer 2 figured out, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play it out of the D natural minor scale again, but I'm going to use a different positioning of the scale and the fingering. It's the exact same scale. Let me show you the first positioning was... Right? The version I'm going to play is the same notes, just different setup here. And I'm going to use, again, the top half of that scale, which, so we would have... That's what we end up with. Okay, so the way this works is basically, here's, well, first of all, here's the second layer that I'm going to play. Something like that. And the first 3 notes are, you know, the first 3 that we're working with. Those are our notes, right? So I've got those, and the first notes of the last one were... And so when you put them together, you end up with... Which sounds kind of Japanese, I guess. That's one thing that I do that really helps me out a lot, is I'll try, when I'm doing this harmonizing thing, I'll try and test out the notes, see what they're going to sound like together. Like pluck them and so forth. So okay, so it sounds like crap right now, but it's going to sound really good. Here in a second, I'm going to queue up a new clip, and then I'm going to go ahead and record it. Something like that. We'll clean it up here in a second.